I really have. This is my two favorite schools in the country when I was growing up. I wanted to go to Alabama. I just love Coach Bryant. We love Coach Royal. So we're aware of those games. And I've been around Tommy Nobis when he talked about the quarterback sneak in the Orange Bowl, and that I was standing there with Mickey Andrews, who was the offensive guard, the defensive coordinator at Florida State, and Joe Namath and Tommy Nobis. And Joe Namath said, "Tommy, you know we scored. You know we got in." And Tommy Nobis says, "Joe, not only did you not get in, none of your offensive linemen got in either." And then he said, "And you missed it by this much." So it's been a tremendous series, and there have been some great games. And Texas has come out on top of those most of the time, but the games have been really close and really competitive. And we've been so lucky over the last 5 years to play storied programs. And you're playing Ohio State and Michigan and SC, and then you got Nebraska and Oklahoma in your own league, and then you start looking at Alabama, and you start looking at all these things and the releases from John and the best teams in the history of college football, and there's just a list of them there together, and it's been really, really fun, and this one will be no different.
Coach, talk a little bit about some of these universities are very different, but they have a lot of ties between the defensive coordinators. Major Applewhite was at Alabama with Nick Saban. Talk a little bit about that and how it might help or hurt.
It helps in that we have a pretty good feel of at least their juniors and seniors, and most of their players are juniors and seniors. And Major was there as an offensive coordinator, and he knows those kids. He knows how they think. He knows how they'll practice. It's been interesting that Will and Major have said their bowl practices will be exactly like ours. Said there will not be any difference in the preparation for the two teams. And then Will was kind of raised by Nick. He had 5 years under him as a defensive coordinator, and it's really funny when you start looking at the defenses. They're exactly the same. I mean, the calls are the same. So that's the positive for us. The negative is that both staffs will be trying to outthink what the other one's going to do because we know so much about each other, and you have to be careful not to outthink yourself, and you have to still do what you do best. But Nick's done a tremendous job. He's a great coach. We have tremendous respect for him. They've got great players, and they coach them really hard, and they coach them well.
Is your approach in practice also just because it would be too much if it was Alabama every day with such a big gap between championship and ball?
Yes, we haven't touched Alabama yet. We'll do that. We'll start Alabama the 3 days that we come back after Christmas. And then we'll treat it like a 10-day open date is basically what we'll do. We'll really work Alabama for those 3 days. And then we will be all Alabama, obviously, when we get out there. And we'll have a week out in Pasadena and L.A., and that week will be like a week's preparation building up to the game. But we felt like that we needed to go back and be more fundamentally sound. We had to do a better job of blocking. We had to do a better job of being physical with each other. So we've just basically been lining up ones against ones and scrimmaging. And obviously when your one offense is playing our one defense, it's playing Alabama because it's the same schemes exactly. So we feel like that that's what we wanted to do in this stretch of time.
Coach, very quickly, even though you've been ranked to the top all year, you became underdogs in this game. Do you like that, and do you think it's fair that y'all are playing both of that?
It doesn't matter what I think or like, really, but I think it's fair. You look at the way they ended against Florida, and you look at the way we ended against Nebraska, and I watched their film against Florida. They dominated. They played great. So if they play like that, I mean, it's unbelievable how well they played. And we sure didn't play our best game against A&M or our best game against Nebraska. So our kids have been around long enough to win. But neither one of those were pretty games in all phases like Alabama's was against Florida. So I understand that completely. They've got great players. They've got all those All-Americans. So I told our players, I think that's fair. And you look at it, on paper, last two ball games for us and last one for them, I would think everybody would pick them.
Did you draw the conclusion to 05 at all?
No, but it's very similar. I think their team's very similar to 05 with a Heisman Trophy winner and being so good and dominating at the end. And our team didn't get the credit they probably deserved. We won 70-3 in the Big 12 championship game, got no credit, so it probably deserved more credit then. Right now, I can see this has been a team that's had to fight for everything they get. So we understand where we are. We know we're a work in progress and still haven't played our best game, and we've got to play great. what they also understand, these are two great programs. They're two great teams, really. And people will compare everything. None of that matters. You've got 3.5 hours to win a national championship, so it's the team that plays the best for 3.5 hours. And that's all that really matters.
Back on that same note with Colt and Vince, saying lose the Heisman to the national championship guy. Is Colt the kind of guy that can use any of that as motivation? Because he kind of doesn't seem like he would care as much as maybe Vince did.
No, I do think, too, that Colt's been there twice. Very few times does anybody ever get to go once. He's seen the story twice. And it was really funny at the end of the national at the end of the Heisman, he walked up to me and said, you know, this is not the most important thing in my life. That next game's going to be when it comes to sports. And the national championship as a team is a bigger team award than the Heisman. But he was very gracious about Mark and congratulated him. And again, Colt's gotten so many awards. He got all the quarterback awards, and I was really proud for him.
Coach, you got past Sue. Now you get a guy like Terrence Cody. Can you just, I know you're not dealing with Alabama maybe exactly right yet, but just in terms of their defensive front, the kind of problems that you need to overcome.
Yes, the coaches we are dealing with Alabama. We're not able to sleep. And they've got 3 Sues up front. I mean, that's the problem. Everywhere you look, they're knocking somebody down, and we've been afraid to show it to our kids. We're going to try to we're going to limit how much film we show them. We're going to cut some plays out, and we're going to go real slow with them and we're not going to feed them all of it at once.
Coaching along the lines back to 05, I know you said once you got out in Pasadena that the national media kind of helped you coach a little bit. Do you sense that may be happening with this matchup, or do you think it's going to be a lot more?
I have not. I've been so busy with recruiting and watching film, I haven't turned on a TV, very honestly, and haven't had anything. I haven't heard anything. So everybody says that everybody's picked us to get beat, which is fine. I just haven't seen it yet. So I'm sure the closer we get and everybody tells us we've got no chance, it'll probably be a good motivator. I probably won't have to say a whole lot again.
Is your approach with Colt any different coming into this game than any of the other games previously leading up to this one?
No, if you look at the players at Alabama, they're very similar to the defensive players at Oklahoma. They're very similar to the defensive players at Nebraska. They're great players. They're well coached, and we know if you look at the 2 best defenses in the country, both offenses have gotten they've got their challenge ahead of them to sit here and try to move the ball because there'll be a lot of people on that defense flying around and getting after people, and Colt knows that. He understands, and I think that our guys also understand you're not going to get to a conference championship game and a national championship game very often without playing a really good football team, and that's why it's going to come down to who plays the best. In 05, Colorado had really struggled at the end. They had some people hurt. There was some people being negative about Coach Barnett at that time. So we caught a Colorado team who was in a tough spot. Nebraska was just the opposite. They'd won 5 straight. They were on a high. They had nothing to lose, and they were relaxed. And what we told our kids this time last year is we wanted to win the Big 12 championship and get our goal, and play them for the national championship would be a dream. So we want the pressure off. We want them to go have fun, enjoy the moment.
Alabama's got a few Texans on their team, quarterback. How's that play into it with the regional effect and recruiting and that sort of thing?
It doesn't. They're both really good players. There's one from Smithson Valley, and Larry Hill was at practice today, and we should take them, both of them. They're both really good players, and they're playing really well. It's the same thing around here. Every time you look up, somebody's got one we should have taken. There's 375. I'm really appealing the NCAA to see if we could get 375 scholarships available each year, and I think that's the only way to correct who we're going to play against. It's really good, but you look at what they've done. Both kids have done an amazing job, and offensively, he couldn't have played any better in that ball game against Florida. Just to see the progress from the beginning of the year till the end, they can do both now. At the first of the year, they were more limited, but they're really good and have great balance now.
Is there a lot you'll change offensively in terms of what you did against Nebraska and Oklahoma because you weren't as successful?